Welcome to Spill the Tea Radio, where we interview awesome singer songwriters and those who influence their lives. Spill the Tea Radio explores the journey, creativity, and inspiration behind the songs. With me today is Shannon Butcher. Shannon is an acclaimed Canadian singer, songwriter, arranger, and record producer. She charms her audiences far and wide with her joyful wit and warm energy. Shannon has been lauded for her ability to inhabit the lyric and character of a song while equally celebrating the playful nature of jazz. Her performing career over the last 2 decades has brought her across Canada, including performances at Victoria's Herman's Jazz Club, Edmonton's The Yardbird Suite, Upstairs Jazz in Montreal, and Ontario's greatest jazz festivals. Internationally, Shannon has performed across the United States and England. Shannon has released 5 albums under her own record label, Summer Bloom Records. With her first major album, she was named Best New Jazz Artist of the Year by iTunes. The list of her accomplishments they go well beyond this introduction. So let's spill the tea with Shannon Butcher. Welcome, Shannon.
Hi, Dave. How are you?
Yes, I'm great. It's great to have you with us. Thanks so much for joining. And I mean, people are really interested. They want to hear the story. They want to hear the story of that, that overnight success that we talk about. Yours has been about 2 decades in the making. So help us understand, what's a typical week look like for Shannon Butcher as far as your professional life?
You're your social media director, you're your uh, booking agent, and you're the musician, it turns out, too, and work for the future, like booking things for the future, preparing for the things that are happening this week, recording things for social media that are somewhat different than what I'm going to be doing when I'm performing, either like a teaser or something fun, or just trying to invite people into your life a little bit more. So sort of writing the scripts, if you will, for that, because we are spilling the tea. So very few things that seem off the cuff are truly off the cuff in the world of social media. I think we all know that secret. So I always joke with my friends that it's like that thing that you want to get to be perfect in 30 seconds takes you 45 minutes to like through the conceptualization of it and the production of it. So yeah, a week for me is rehearsing, um, writing sometimes, and since I am the band leader of most of my bands, there's a lot of sort of less arts work that goes into that side of things. The same with being a producer of a record and getting your album out to be promoted and everything. So it's a balancing act of the creative side and then the more office creative side. Is that the way of saying it? Because I think people who do sort of the more what we would call like the left brain stuff, it still requires a creativity. It's just a different kind.
So when did you start singing? When did you start performing? Were you 2 and 3
Oh,
years old when did you sing before you could talk?
I think essentially, I started in I'm from a smaller, well, it's actually not that small. I forget what, it's one of the biggest cities in Canada. If you were to look at the top 10, it's Mississauga. So a suburb of Toronto, but it has an enormous population. I grew up there and I was in a choral, like the Mississauga Youth Choir, it was called.
Mhm.
I think I started in that when I was 7. And then there was also a lovely community theater group that I think I started performing with when I was 10. So I was taking piano lessons all that time.
When did you realize you
Busy because
wanted to do this as a profession?
I just always thought that I would do it. I don't think I so much thought I'm going into this as a profession, although I did go to university for music.
Mhm.
So um, I studied classical music at the University of Toronto, and they also have a jazz program there. And I was very good friends with many of the people who were in the jazz program. And after I left the classical world, I did music theater for a while in the Ontario is lucky to have so many beautiful little theaters in smaller towns. So I did musicals in the summer, like summer stock kind of concept.
Right.
And then I sort of fell in love with the world of jazz while I was living in Toronto. And then I sort of migrated into their world. And I love it. I love the community of jazz in Toronto, and we're incredibly spoiled with the amount of talent in our city. It's amazing. It's just the fact that I get to make music with my friends, who are beautiful people and amazing musicians. I just, every gig I have a moment where I'm like, thank my lucky stars,
Yeah, yeah,
It's a
it is incredible. So it sounds like you had great support from your family all the way along, or did I mean you were going to university and studying music. Did they ever say to you, well, that's nice, Shannon, like you can go and study music, but we really want you to be a doctor or a lawyer, an engineer, an accountant, or something like that? Or did
Mm.
they always believe that that's what you were destined to be?
My parents always believed in me. They just wanted me to be happy, and they were very supportive of me as a musician. So I never had any pushback from my family on that, which was really great.
Yeah.
Although when I was I did temp work when I was, in a fair bit of my 20s. I worked at the Ministry of the Attorney General, and, I worked at the hospital at the one point in time. I had been on breakfast television that morning, and I came in for my shift that I think started at noon, and, I was a receptionist in the hospital, and the woman who was my boss was like, "Shannon, you're so smart. Why are you wasting your time being a musician?" I was just like, "I was just on TV this morning." I was just on, did you not want, like, that felt like a pretty big deal to me to be on City TV's breakfast television performing live. It was a pretty big deal. And it was just a sort of this funny, that person obviously didn't value music the
Obviously,
way my
obviously.
parents did, but it was kind of, what more do I need to do to prove to you?
What do you think is the big challenge for artists today?
Well, we've lost the ability to make income off of our recordings. That definitely was a huge change that I saw for myself. Um, because you would play a show, and a big part of your income from a show would be selling your CDs afterwards,
Right.
or receiving the income of them being sold online. So I think that's a big challenge. I think in Canada, a big challenge is how big our country is.
Hmm.
Truly, the big challenge is how big we are. So it's difficult to play a lot of places because of our population. Whereas in the States, you look at us, what would be considered a smaller city of the States, and they maybe have like 10 jazz clubs in one town, where we don't have the population to necessarily support that many clubs in a radius of where you live.
Well, let's get into one of your songs. We're going to play one of the songs that Shannon wrote. The song was released probably 10 years ago, maybe even a little more than 10 years ago, but it is timeless. It's been put in the category of wonderful wedding songs, and we'll hear more about that later. It's got a sweet bounce to the beat and a quirky little hook, if I may. So as you listen, see if you can pick it out. Let's take a listen to singer-songwriter Shannon Butcher and Better Kisser.
She stood beside him in line to greet the world for the first time as man and wife. It's the beginning of their new life. The day is filled with friends and relations, all gathered for the great occasion in the warmth of early July. They came to see this doll get her guy. One by one, they took their turn, bestowing wishes, wisdom they learned, showering blessings, happy ever afters. When his old flame paused for a moment of laughter, she said, "You were a better kisser when you were a single man." He said, "Well, guess it's good that I caught her while I can. Now she'll be mine for all of my days, and I'm gonna love her in so many ways. I will find us a house, we will make it a home, we'll have but a family will grow from the love that we share. One photograph captured it all, their joy so young, so bright. Now years later it reminds us all of the love from that sweet night when she said you were a better kisser when you were a single man. He said, well, guess it's good that I caught her while I can. Now she'll be mine for all of my days, and I'm gonna love her in so many ways. I will find us a house, we will make it a home. We'll have 6 little hearts to call our own. We start out today as one perfect pair, but a family will grow from the love that we share.
That was Better Kisser by Shannon Butcher. Shannon, what was the inspiration behind the song? I mean, I know the story, but our listeners don't know the story, and I think it's a fantastic story. So what was the inspiration behind the song?
Well, it has a very specific inspiration. For my grandmother's 80th birthday, I decided I would write this song for her, and it's inspired by their wedding. My grandparents' wedding album was always one of my favorite things to look through. All the photos, everybody looks like a movie star. Everything's in black and white. You know, there's a limited number of photos, and my grandparents look gorgeous. And there's one photo where they're in the receiving line that I was particularly one of my favorites. So everyone's coming in congratulating them, and they're not just smiling in that picture. You can tell my grandfather is laughing. And I had asked my grandmother, like, do you by any chance remember like what was happening in this picture? And she did, and that's because the woman standing in front of my grandfather is his ex-girlfriend. And she said, I remember she gave him the kiss, and then she said, Jack, you were a better kisser when you were single, which I thought was just so funny and
And
thrilling.
that's an interesting part of the story, and it's an interesting part of the singer-songwriter process where you write the lyrics with one thought in mind, but they can mean so many different things to other people, and they adopt them and interpret them the way that they see them. I mean, if I were a singer-songwriter, that would give me such great joy and a great feeling. How do you feel about that when people come up to you and say, oh, this is the way I interpreted the lyrics to your song?
Oh, it's so fascinating. I love it. First of all, I'm just thrilled they're listening to lyrics. And yeah, it's really, really meaningful to think how you can be a part of someone's life through your music when you're not with them one-on-one, should I say. I mean, I think first and foremost, I actually consider myself to be a performer. I wouldn't be happy just sitting and writing songs. I write songs to perform them. So I know that that's my first love, and where I get the most joy comes from being on stage and connecting with the audience that way. But I also love being able to share my own songs with them. And there's never a better compliment when people, there's never a better compliment than when people come up to me after a show and say, like, oh, my favorite songs are the ones that you wrote.
Yes.
Because when you're performing in jazz, you're often doing lots of standards or songs that people know very well. And there's some venues where that's the best thing to do is songs that people are familiar with. But when I do my own show, I like to incorporate as many of my own songs as possible, as well as program my favorite standards and stuff like that. So
the process is 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration when the hard work
right.
when the hard work really goes in. I wish I could
Yes.
take credit for that saying, but I can't. It was Edison that said that. So Shannon, what have you got coming up? Have you got some songs in the works? Have you got recordings scheduled to go? You've got some gigs coming up. What's lined up for Shannon Butcher?
Well, I recently put out a cover of One Fine Day that people can go and find on Spotify, the Carole King song.
And if people want to find out more about where you're going to be and what you're up to, what's the website they can visit?
ShannonButcher.com.
We've been in conversation with Shannon Butcher, singer-songwriter. And if you'd like to know more about Shannon's music, go to ShannonButcher.com. Shannon, thanks so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been so lovely to chat with you.
We need to go and pay some bills. After the break, we find out what our next guest and Guinness World Records have in common. Stay with us. There's lots more to come on Spill the Tea Radio, right here on Classic 1220.